Considering how crappy everything pays right now, I was beyond hyped when I found an opening for a night janitor paying $40 an hour. In the rural-ass backwater swamp of Georgia, $40 an hour to clean a church. My little agnostic heart was ready to pull up for an altar call once they finally hired me. Good God, I see why they pay that high now. It's an easy enough schedule too. I go in after church services or meetings, do some basic cleaning, and dip out. Takes maybe 2 or 3 hours every night, and I do an afternoon clean on Sundays between services. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I do a couple of late nights and it's all good. They told me they wanted a more thorough clean once a week, whatever day I choose, so I just decided to make my Wednesday nights the long ones. For $40 an hour, I'm not going to skimp either. I go over every goddamn inch of God's good house with a fine-tooth comb. I'm in here flipping more tables than Jesus to make sure they're clean. It takes maybe 7 hours or so to go through everything, and it's the easiest money I've ever made. The place is old. From what they told me when I started, it's at least a couple of centuries, built in colonial times and renovated, rebuilt over the years, on the same land. There's a little cemetery out behind it too, though many of the graves are too worn down to read at this point. They haven't had a new resident since the 1800s, I think. One big sanctuary makes up most of the place, with a couple of little rooms in the back behind the main altar. A little door on the right side led back into a small hallway that smelled of mildew, with 2 doors on the left and one at the other end of the hall. Normally, it would look like just your average old Protestant church in the South, except it gets a little weird. The first door on the left is painted blue, not like a regular blue either, but like a bright cerulean. It's both padlocked and deadbolted from the outside though, and on the pastor, William, has a key to it. When I was talking to the Anita, the treasurer who hired me, she told me she had no idea what was down there, but it was probably just old storage or something. I had to ask her again when she said down there, because we're in the heart of Georgia swamp country. If someone tries to make a basement around here, they're just going to get a room of crumbling mud and humidity. She assured me it was a cellar, though she only was told this by Pastor William. My first Monday night clean went off without a problem. Went in and just ran a vacuum over the floor after a prayer group meeting. Tuesday I was off, so I just stayed home and played Shadow of the Erd Tree. Wednesday night after service, I went in around 8:30 to start my cleaning. The only person left there was William at this point, but even then, we only briefly passed each other as he was heading out. There was not much to say of the interaction though. We just explained pleasantries and he said he was off to get some shut-eye. I was just desperate to get into the church and out of the swamp heat. I got in, walked to the little supply closet in the back of the sanctuary, and pulled out the vacuum. Wednesday night service wasn't very crowded usually, just a few grandmas and the really devout couple of middle-aged men with their thick study Bibles, so nothing was really dirty. I figured I could just milk the clock a little by dusting around and just fucking about in general. Might as well get some money while I'm here. Vacuumed the sanctuary with no problem and went to go get in the back hallway next. Probably a good time to mention the sanctuary has 2 sets of lights, one for the front altar area and the other for the actual pews and seating area. I only had the altar area lights because they were pretty damn bright. Until you get into the hallway at least, then you can barely see because the light only extends a few pews out. Headphones in, music going, I just kept doing my cleaning. Ran down the hall, into the office next to the blue door, and even got to the pastor's office while I was at it. I didn't really notice anything until I looked up and out the door from the end of the hallway. I could see straight down the beige hall, blue door glowing bright in the fluorescent, into the sanctuary. I don't think I've ever felt goosebumps like I did when I looked down that hall. At least 7 or 8 people were sitting in the pews just out of the light's reach. They were all dressed in black, heads bowed so faces couldn't be seen. I had to squint to see them almost, but they were definitely in the first 2 rows outside of the light. I don't know if there was anything behind them. It was much darker, but I was already shook. I briefly closed my eyes and reopened them, but they were still fucking there. Then there was a loud thump on the blue door, like something being thrown hard against it, but there wasn't a sound of it falling down either. I took my attention from the sanctuary to the blue door for just seconds, but it was long enough for everyone in the sanctuary to suddenly vanish. Nothing was there when I looked back, with it looking just like I had left it, not a soul around. I kind of just shook it off as having like a late night heebie-jeebies moment, you know, except I finished up right there and started locking up. I've never really believed in any kind of supernatural, was religious in my younger days, but had since really drifted off. I've always liked horror stuff, but the idea of ghosts and shit in the real world, please. Then I realized I had to turn the lights off at the altar and leave through the main sanctuary door. Swear I'm not scared of the dark, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't creeped out a little. I turned off the light, saw the moon shining through the stained glass, and immediately got a chill again. It's been nearly 100 degrees with full humidity the past few days, and it felt like I was being dunked in ice water. There wasn't even anything there. I looked around, but nothing. Pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight, making a quick pace toward the front doors. I swear, to whatever god you want to hold me to, that there was the sound of footsteps thudding along behind me. I swung the door open and practically dived through. Never felt so fucking good to feel swamp heat on my skin. Slammed the damn thing behind me too. Started to walk to my car, then realized I didn't lock it. I thought about just not going back, leaving it be until the next person got there on Friday for a prayer group. Then I realized the money I would lose if I didn't do something right and lost this job. Look, rent is fucking high right now and I've gotta pay bills. So despite everything in me telling me to get the hell out, I turned around to go lock the door. The keys were in my hands, jingling like wind chimes because I was shaking so damn hard. I finally got the key in and started to turn it when sound started reverberating from the sanctuary, a chorus with an organ swelling to a crescendo. I turned the key and yanked it out at the same time, almost taking the doorknob with me, and ran the hell out of there. I could still hear it in my car when I started it, and whipped out of the little dirt parking lot. Pretty sure I hit the ditch on the way out too, but I sure as shit wasn't just going to stop. It wasn't until a few minutes into my drive that my hand finally loosened on the steering wheel and I realized what they were singing. I remember it from going to an old Baptist church with my grandma. They only did old hymnals and refused to use anything but a piano, but I remember the damn words. Nothing can for sin atone, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Not of good that I have done, nothing but the blood of Jesus. I asked Anita about it on Friday night when I went in. Made sure I was out by nightfall this time though. She said that she'd always thought there were angels around this place, keeping watch over the flock. Don't know how angelic that sounds, but I guess she hasn't been here alone after dark. When I told Pastor William about the thump coming from behind the blue door, he had the briefest flicker of something on his face. Then it was right back into smiling preacher mode, like fucking baby Billy. Told me there was a problem with possums digging into the basement and not finding their way out. I don't know that I really believe him. That sounded bigger than any possum I've ever seen. Even the one that gets into my garbage every night. I started calling Round Ronald. No way a possum was going to get that fierce with a door. They canceled service Sunday, so I was off. Going back in tonight after the prayer meetings and doing a little cleaning, so I'll update if there's anything that happens. I want to chalk it up to just being in a strange place at night, but there's no way those chills were based on nothing. This shit keeps up, I might start praying while I'm there. Yeah, not gonna lie, I've worked some really awful jobs, but next to nothing has had me feeling this kind of anxiety before going in. Hell, I remember puking every morning before going to my call center healthcare job. Getting screamed at and told you're the reason some boomer is going to die, all because their heart medication was denied by the insurance and they had to pay $3. It's really not fun, like at all, but I would honestly take it again at this point, if it paid the same as this place. Went in last night to clean after the prayer meetings, except I went in a little early to see if I could actually catch William, maybe see if I could get through the blue door. Didn't work, mind you. Think he's being a lot more secretive about something than he lets on. I approached him after the last of the older men left, giving a hearty wave and "see you Wednesday" along with it. Pastor William started to walk back to his office as I was starting to get my usual cleaning supplies out. The sun was still up, so I was planning on hitting this place quick and getting the hell out before it got dark again. Never thought I would be thankful for the sun staying up until 9 in the summer, but here we are. Before he could walk into the hall, I got his attention, asking if he wanted me to clean up the room behind the blue door. He just kind of smiled. There was this look I just couldn't quite place, maybe concern. Then he gave me some bullshit answer about how he had done a spring cleaning back in May, so not to worry about that. Just focus on the areas where people move through and keep things nice. That's all I need to do. A little weird, but whatever. Then he dropped the goddamn bomb that they're hosting a wedding tomorrow, so I'm going to need to do a deep clean. Fuck. I was not prepared for this. I tried making up some excuse about not being able to do it tonight because family event or something, and he just told me to come back after the event was over, said he absolutely needs it clean by tomorrow. I didn't have anything with me. I wasn't going to drive the 30 minutes to get back home either with my busted ass air conditioner. There wasn't much choice, so I just started doing whatever I could and doing it fast. Swear to God I've never cleaned that fast in my life. Dusting corners, scrubbing down filthy baseboards. They wanted me to pull out a whole damn carpet cleaner. Before I knew it, the sun had gone down without me realizing. The church lights were so bright with the stained glass that it was hard to notice when it got dark, but now it felt like the lights were a haven. Phone said it was around 9:30, so not much time since sundown. That's when I realized I forgot to bring my phone charger, which was just really fantastic. The cherry on top of the whole thing, you know, at least it still had about half the battery. Put it in power saver and just hit work even harder. It wasn't until I was cleaning windows that shit started getting weird. Maybe 30 minutes later, I was up on the stepladder, going down the stained glass windows with a soft rag and warm water, getting ungodly amounts of dust, may I add, when something suddenly thumped hard against the window. Honestly, with how hard it hit, I don't know how the window didn't break. Sounded like a whole cinder block, but it must have hit just right on the window trim to absorb the impact. Almost made me fall off the ladder though. Hell, I was barely saved thanks to the clumsy recovery reflexes I've honed all my life. It took me a minute, but I steeled myself and went out the front door, looking right around the corner to where the window was. There was a street light that illuminated the entire side, giving me a pretty clear view. Nothing was there, though, only the small, worn-down graveyard a few feet away from the church, made even creepier by the shadows being cast from the saturated light of a sodium bulb. That was about the time I noticed one of the shadows longer than the other. When I looked back toward the cemetery, there was a tall, dark-suited man with a wide-brimmed hat, just kind of standing in front of one of the graves. I'm gonna throw this out there. If you want intricate details of the rest of the night, you're not going to get a lot. Things are still a massive blur and I'm completely fucking freaked out. This is all from what I can remember in the very rapid escalation that came next. Obviously, seeing the goddamn Undertaker making his WWE return in the middle of a graveyard was not on my agenda last night. I ran my ass inside so fast I should be on a plane to the goddamn Paris Olympics right now. Okay, I need you to understand just how little I am willing to fuck around with whatever is going on here. I got right back in there and locked that door, deadbolted it, whatever I needed to do. Whatever the hell was in here might just be some spooky spirit shit, but that thing out there could very well be an in real life murderer. Look, if I'm going to die, let it be by some instant 13 ghosts mess. I'm not chill with being murdered by a human. They can be really fucked up. Locked, deadbolted, didn't stop there. I flipped every light switch on and ran down the hall into William's office, shut that door and deadbolted the fuck out of it too. Then I grabbed my phone and started to make a call to whatever officer they would send out here. Except I'm in bumfuck nowhere, no damn signal, and somehow, even though I put power mode on, I'm at 15% on my battery. I tried calling the cops again and my phone died right then and there. At this point, I am decidedly not chill and am debating whether it's my best move to just hide in here or risk getting to my car. It took me a few minutes, but I started to kind of calm down and try to rationalize everything. It was probably a gravestone, right? like a taller one with one of those weird sculptures on it. I've never looked too close at it to be able to tell, to be honest. Not especially planning on it unless it's high noon and the sun is shining. This was not that time, so I decided that for now we're safe in here and we're just gonna chalk all this up to being a big misunderstanding late at night. Nerves going a few fewer miles per hour, I decided to go back to cleaning windows. That was about all that was left other than cleaning the baptism pool, and that was as simple as a quick scrub since it didn't seem to be used often. All good, we're getting through this. I'm sorry I start talking in the plural when I'm freaked out. Washing the windows was going okay, but I still kept the deadbolt and everything on the door and every light on. All good, all fine. No worries, just wiping the window. Then came the screaming. Ice in my damn veins. It was a woman, I think. All I know is it was guttural, like the sound of grief in the rawest form. I don't know what the cause of the scream was, but I could tell it was in the building. It took me a minute to get moving again, but I had to know if I was right. It was still going to, with few stops in between the loud roars of anger and despair. I was right. I wish I wasn't, but it was coming from behind the blue door. It kept going too, but it sounded so fucking far away down there that I'm not really sure how it could. Unless there's some massive concrete bunker under here, I don't know how anything more than a crawl space could be under there. Then it stopped. I was in the hallway at that point, and I was in the middle of trying to rip myself in half so I could run away. There was that one nagging little feeling that this could be someone who was in trouble. I can't just leave someone here if something is going on. That would make me just as responsible, wouldn't it? I swear to God, if my mama hadn't raised me, my ass would have been gone faster than my dad. I knocked on the door, giving a second to see if there was any response. It was only a moment until there was a faint answer, like a hello, I think. I kind of chased down my courage and shouted through the door, asking who they were. No answer. I knocked on the door again and still nothing. I gave it one more good knock, figuring the third time was the charm. Turns out, that's bullshit. Right as I let the third knock go, things went to hell. The lights flickered, briefly at first, but they kept going sporadically. Never actually goes off for more than seconds at a time, but always flickers on just enough to fuck with my vision. My eyes were doing that thing where you can't see in the dark after coming in from the bright sun, making everything in the dark vague. I turned around, ready to find my way out of the church and just say hell with this for the night. Except I turned back toward the sanctuary to leave and saw an entire congregation standing there before the lights flickered off again. I'm proud to report I did not, despite popular reports, soil myself in that moment. Instead, I screamed like a damned Looney Tunes character and started running for my keys sitting on the first pew. Thankfully, the lights came back on steadily and it was no longer occupied by whatever ghostly churchgoers were there just seconds before. I thought I had caught a break. Thought I was going to grab my keys and make the run to the car. Water started splattering behind me. The baptism pit was running, quickly splashing as the tub filled. I took a gulp, turned around, and that's about when things went totally fucking shining on me. Deep crimson was pouring out of the faucet, interspersed with intense blasts of a rusty, dirty black like swamp water. I wanted to throw up right then and there, seeing all the crimson splattering everywhere against the white backdrop. I'm not really religious, but a baptism pit filling with blood seems a little sacrilegious, I guess. I wasn't waiting around to debate the ethical implications of a bloody ghost bath, though. I turned around to grab my keys, which were still sitting on the pew. Mistake number 2. Face to fucking face. I don't know who it was. I don't know what it was. All I know is that I was face to face with one of the dozens of good church patrons that now filled the sanctuary. The sound that came out of me was like a car hitting the brakes at 70 miles an hour. I'm certain every dog in the Tri-County area must have perked up because this thing still haunts me, like it's burned into my mind because it was right there in my face, almost nose to nose, if it had one. The face was waxy, almost like eggshell white skin. Not scary by itself, but the dark, hollow sockets instead of eyes were what really got me. I expected to be staring into thin air, but I'm seeing into the back of this thing's skull. That was when it opened its mouth, rancid, decayed breath blowing into my face. If I had eaten anything since yesterday morning, I might have puked then and there. When it opened its mouth, I snatched my keys off the pew and tore off down the middle aisle. Sounds from hell were what started all around me. The organ came to life, screeching and out of tune. Then came the singing, that same goddamn hymnal as the last time. Started wishing I hadn't deadbolted and chained the door when I was too shaky to pull it open. But somehow I got out of there and tore the hell out of the parking lot. And here we are. I've been up for hours on end because I can't get that face out of my mind. Not to mention I still don't know what the hell was going on behind that blue door. That scream sounded human, and I could swear I heard someone saying hello after the first knock. I don't know what to trust anymore though after this morning. I got a text from William. Know what it said? Because I expected it to read along the lines of, "What in the hell happened here?" Nope. "Wow, cleanest I've seen this place in years. Amazing job, thank you." What the fuck? I'm going to do some research, maybe see if I can find anything on the cemetery or the church. Hell, I'm about to look into William himself. Something doesn't sit right about him. And yes, I know, there are going to be some people asking me why I don't just quit or break the lock. Number 1, I am so damn poor, y'all. Like, I get why the job pays so much now, but the chances of me finding anything else right now are slim. My landlord is chomping at the bit to evict me so he can raise the rent again. Second of all, honestly, if it gets down to it, I might. I don't know what the hell is past that door, but if things start looking like there may be someone, I'm not past some vandalism. Anyway, I'm off until tomorrow night after Wednesday's service. I'll probably try to do an early clean again in the daylight, so I don't deal with this again. I'll update if anything happens, but I really don't plan on being there overnight again until I absolutely have to. So that was fucked up. I don't really know what to say. Like, I genuinely am still. I don't know what's going on. I mentioned a while back, I've been agnostic at best since leaving Evangelical Southern Baptism over a decade ago. I was the Reddit atheist back in the beginning. Now, I don't know if I can ever live my life the same. I want you to know that what you're about to read may shake your faith a little. I went in early on Wednesday evening, hoping to catch William before anyone else got there. Sure enough, I pulled up and he was already there, car in the parking lot. I hurried in out of the heat, thankful that at least the AC worked if this place was haunted as shit. Found William in his office. He was surprised to see me at the least. There wasn't really much else that I could do at this point. The encounter on Monday night fucked me up. I can still smell the stench of that thing, the decay from its breath. I want a gag. That's not to mention I keep hearing the sound of blood splashing in the baptism tub. Did you know blood splashing sounds different than water splashing? Think it's because of the consistency of it. It's really gross. I've been wearing earbuds most of the time since because it just keeps ringing. He must have known what I was there about. Not that he looked scared or anything, just concerned. Before I could even get a word out, he asked me what happened. Kind of took me off guard, to be honest. I was honestly going and expecting to be gaslit as insane. Take the little wins where I can, I guess. So I told him everything. The congregation, the swelling music and hymns, the shadows in the cemetery, and blood pouring from the baptism faucet. Everything was out in the open, and he acknowledged what I was saying, though didn't say much as I was going through my story. Until I told him about the screaming through the blue door. That one got him. Something changed on his face, worry maybe. I couldn't entirely place it. That was when I really leveled with him, just one question to ask. Am I safe or should I quit? Yeah, it seems like a stupid question, I know. Nobody is safe in a haunted fucking church. What kind of bullshit is that? It was all I could think of though, and the crux of what I needed to know. I grew up watching horror and shit, worked in haunts for a while, and I can deal with horror type shit. As long as I know it can't hurt me and won't kill me. Haunted church, sure, I'll just take an edible before I go in. Me and the spirits can be chill. Hell, I'll bring some for them. Maybe they'll shut the fuck up. I was expecting him to tell me the opposite though. So imagine my surprise when he tells me that I'm physically in no danger. He probably realized I didn't believe him too. I'm still not entirely sure if he was trying to get me to quit then and there too. The story I got at that point in the day already seemed like bullshit, or at least not the entire story. Unfortunately, I was right, but I couldn't settle for just leaving it at that. In short, William told me that what I was experiencing were former parishioners. He says he's had experiences too. Hell, said he was terrified by almost the same thing happening to him as I had Monday night. way back when he first came here. Even apologized that he hadn't told me before, saying it was not okay and offering me a bonus for my troubles. Yeah, this was starting to sound like there was a lot more at play here. From his story, the church was hit badly by a strange plague back in the early 1800s. Nothing surprising there, considering we knew bumfuck all about diseases and spread them everywhere. William said most of the congregation perished, with the only survivors being the single pastor and his family, who somehow made full, prosperous recoveries. Totally not shady at all, right? What he tells me from here is all conjecture because supposedly he can only guess. The churchgoers would apparently gather often, even staying at the church for days worshiping and praying for a cure. Meanwhile, this obviously would spread the disease among the flock, just damning them all one by one. Still, the preacher insisted they stay steadfast in the Lord, praying for forgiveness even as bodies began piling up out back. His family were some of the first sick, with his son even supposedly thought dead at one point. Though looking back, it must have just been a very deep coma, yet they're the only ones that survived. Everybody in that cemetery was once a member of this church who perished in that plague. The amount of death in one building would definitely be a magnet for weird shit, but William insists that the spirits are still looking for the preacher, believing he sacrificed them for his own family to live. I was honestly on board with that explanation. He assured me that the spirits wouldn't harm me, simply trying to get me to do what they wanted. Except then the question of, what the fuck does a congregation of ghost Christians want me to do for them? Open the door. That's what they wanted me to do, according to William. According to him, the ashes of the preacher and his family are stored down there. He was superstitious after losing his entire flock to a plague. They found him and his entire family dead down in that room one day. Door and room freshly painted with a bright seafoam blue. From what William told me, he picked up on some Gullah Geechee superstitious customs when he started getting paranoid. They said spirits couldn't cross through, mistaking the blue for water so he would be safe. Out of respect for the dead family, the church has kept the door blue since. William assured me that I was safe, but that there was nothing behind that door. It was simply a small room, sealed off out of respect or adherence to the dead, whatever I wanted to call it. The story was kind of believable when he was telling me. Maybe it's just my willingness to buy in thanks to just having my experience validated. Either way, he reassured me and I took my leave for the afternoon, telling him I would be back after service. Was I going to have to be here for a while after dark? Yeah, but the bonus was $600, so who are you to judge me? It wasn't until I was back home that I really started thinking about it. There was no way there was a room there. It didn't make sense with the outside of the church, so it started bringing me to other questions, like, if he was so willing to tell me that, why not just show me? Spirits couldn't slip in behind that easily, right? Should just be an empty room, right? Then I thought about the screams I heard. They were definitely behind the door, but if spirits aren't allowed to cross in, then why the hell are they there? Is my haunting logic broken? Look, something wasn't sitting right with me about how he was acting. Something about what he was saying was giving away that there was more to everything. So, I decided to solve this shit once and for all. Wasn't there some movie where the ghosts were trying to give hints about how someone needed help? Like they were doing terrifying haunting shit, but really just trying to help? Crimson Peak maybe. Either way, I thought that was a legitimate possibility. I'm not going to stereotype or anything, but we've had a number of evangelical preachers doing shady shit in the news lately. My conscience wouldn't let me pass, so I ran into town before I was due to go back after Wednesday's service. Bought a set of bolt cutters and a crowbar. I'm finding out what's in that damn thing, even with a little vandalism. Kept everything hidden in my car until William left. He gave me some platitudes about still being there and being a dependable employee that he could count on. It sounded like a very veiled warning though, like telling me to tread carefully with whatever I do tonight. That kind of reinforced my feelings about what I was going to do that night. He finally left around 9, right when the sun went down, and I was finishing up vacuuming the sanctuary. I waited, made sure he was gone for a few, just sitting in one of the pews waiting so I could make sure nobody saw me getting bolt cutters out of my car. Made it to my car fine, but turned to walk back into the church when a line of dark figures were suddenly standing among the cemetery headstones. None of them moved, just staring me down. Definitely upped my speed to get back into the church and slammed the door behind me, even if he said they couldn't harm me. Hell, that could have been a lie too. Who knows at this point? I ran in, made sure every light was on and started going at it. Cut off the padlock, cut the chain, and started hitting at it with the crowbar when things began going to hell. Lights went out, and gospel music began. I could look out into the sanctuary and see that the congregation was already there. I don't know if it was the adrenaline or what, but I suddenly got some Hulk-level strength and braced my foot against the doorframe, pushing the crowbar in harder. It finally gave, crashing in hard to the wall as it swung in. Deep blue light was pouring from below, showing faintly at the end of a long staircase. First off, I don't know how the hell there was a basement this deep in swamp-ass Georgia. Nothing about a lot of this makes sense, to be honest. But I could hear the screams again, this time louder, full force, drilling into my brain. I kept making my way forward though, determined to find the source. There could be someone hurt down here, or by the sounds of it, multiple people. The scream seemed to layer on itself, like a host of people all crying out in unison. It drowned out the gospel music which started growing fainter behind me. Whatever was in there didn't even register for me at first. I had no idea what I was looking at, even more unsure about if it was something real. Maybe William was trying for a budding SFX career in Atlanta, I don't know. I was trying to rationalize a lot of things until it hit me. I'm describing it from memory, so bear with me. My eyesight isn't great, and I sure as hell didn't get close. The bright blue light was actually emanating from the thing, almost like a fucking anime aura. I have no idea how else to describe it, but the light was just radiating from it, in waves, washing over me as it did. I could feel light, not like when you sit in the sun for too long and start to burn though. This was like water washing over me, sort of like floating down a lazy river, feeling the current flow past you toward the sea. I think back on it, and I should have felt more terrified, but the aura of it was peaceful, like it was speaking to me through it. Be not afraid. If you're a former Christian of any sort, you've heard that. Hell, even I feel like it's stereotypical, but I heard it. Not with my ears, but through the waves. I suddenly felt my heart rate relax, my muscles loosening as the aura continued. I felt at peace here for the first time in ages, and I knew it wasn't my antidepressants. That was when I took a full look at the creature in the room. Bright skin, shining like the sun, was giving off the aura. For a moment I thought it was a massive bundle of limbs at first, which isn't totally off base, but this thing looked like multiple torsos all conjoined, like they were sewn together all standing back to back in a circle. Each one of them had different features, but each was covered in eyes, blinking every different color I knew of, and some I couldn't quite comprehend. Every single one was fixed on me though. That's when I noticed pieces of them missing. Arms and legs were cut off, leaving bleeding stumps that were gushing as if cut recently. There was a steady trickle of bright red falling from the creature, chained to a wall in the small room. The bodies looked frail, malnourished, and emaciated. Despite that, they were still pristinely clean, even bleeding. Its eyes remained fixed on me, a pleading in them. "Help us." It spoke to me again, this time more frail than the first. It must have known that I wasn't the same as whoever put it here. I don't know if it could sense something or just went off guesswork, but it was asking me for help. That was when William spoke from the steps behind me. The angel changed, an aura of anger and fury taking over the blue, turning it to a crimson red. My sense of peace faded, turning to confront William, who was walking toward the angel, pulling a small pocket knife from his coat. I was still holding the crowbar, though I didn't even realize it until that moment when the entire atmosphere shifted. He stepped toward the angel, flicking the pocket knife against one of the outstretched hands, slicing a finger off and catching it before he turned to me. This motherfucker had the audacity to offer it to me, like a fucking snack. I felt my stomach turn harder than it did smelling death's breath, with zero fucking idea of what was going on. I literally asked him if he was trying to get me to eat it. Meanwhile, there was this thing howling in pain in the corner. The screams were back, with every face distorting in terror as sound pierced the air. He waited a moment for them to stop before he started in again. If I ate that finger, he said, I would have prosperity beyond belief. All I had to do was believe in him and eat of the flesh. He even said he's willing to supply me with more if I find I'm not quite happy yet, with the other effect being a major extension on my life. The only question I could really think to ask was how. I'm sorry if the details are vague. I get overloaded incredibly easily with information, and this was, if you really want to put it literally, a biblical amount of fuckery. His explanation made me even more sick. I grew up on the internet wild west of LiveLeak and LimeWire, and this might be the first time I've really gotten a comprehension of man's depravity. This motherfucker was evil. He popped the finger in his mouth more casually than Yuji Itadori could ever hope to, said he was a devout man his entire life, believing God would send salvation for him and his flock. Until the disease came. William told me how his son, Peter, fell ill first, having trouble breathing before slowly degrading, coughing blood from his lungs, and soon after going into a deep, death-like sleep. That was when he started taking a different route than prayer and praise. William gathered his flock in the church one day, bringing them all together in a marathon of praise and worship to God. Then he began convincing them it was time to be rebaptized in the blood of the Lord, cleansing them of their illnesses. He brought in water, lining up all the parishioners to bring through the baptism tub. He baptized them one by one, making sure they were thoroughly drenched. Once everyone was soaked, back at their pew ready to begin another hymn, he took his place on the pulpit and let loose the plan. He set up a rope ahead of calling over everyone, tagging up sacks of lye in the rafters. From there, it was just pulling on the rope, slicing the bags open with nails in the rafters, causing a caustic snow to fall down on the soaked congregation. He said it was a glorious sight, everyone quickly realizing their baptism in the waters of heaven led to burning as if by the fires of hell. It took minutes before they all passed, killing everyone in the church except William. That was when the angel appeared. According to William, it was sent as punishment for the blasphemy he just committed. This jackass literally said, I'm not going to confuse you with the details, but I studied a bit of dark practices and trapped the fucking thing with whatever it was. That's why it was still chained down here, letting him just pick pieces off wherever he wanted. He said he cut off a foot for each of his family, making a stew for them while they were sick. Just pouring some into his son's mouth brought him out of a coma in hours. The angel's flesh is quite literally made of miracles, he said. And then he gave me the ultimatum: leave and have no job, with my entire mental state totally fucked by this encounter and nobody to believe me, or I could die. 2 options, neither of which were great for me. He lifted the knife, getting ready to strike if need be. Fight or flight came in hard. I don't know how I swung the crowbar as fast as I did, maybe adrenaline again, but it bashed the side of his head. William crumpled quickly, falling to the ground in front of me with a thud and knocking his head on the hard floor, dead. The chains holding the angel snapped, freeing it immediately. I don't even know what the hell happened after that. There was a bright flash. I could hear a voice saying, "Thank you," and suddenly I was standing out in the cemetery. In front of me the church was ablaze, a full inferno already. The heat coming off was intense, immediately drying any of the humid air around me. It raged up, with the sound of rising alongside the smoke, before totally incinerating in the dark night. Flames dying out just as quickly as they began. Where the church once stood was nothing but a pile of ash, not even one board left standing. Look, I'm not talking to anyone unless they come to me asking what happened. Even then, not like they'll really believe me. William has got to be gone for good now, so maybe they'll just think he torched it for insurance but the deed went wrong. Who knows, maybe I'll get arrested. At this point, I'm out of a job, so it might be the preferable alternative to finding a job in the current economy. Things are going to be rough. I'm still shaken up and the anxiety about what's going to happen is fucking killing me. I don't know, maybe after this I'll have an angel watching out for me, fingers fucking crossed at least.